We're specifically looking at what the sources call the meaning domain and the symbolic layer.
So our mission today for this deep dive is to explore the invisible weight of ordinary things.
I love that phrasing, the invisible weight.
It's so true, though. We're unpacking how, like, a simple piece of furniture or a forgotten date on a calendar or even just a passing comment in the hallway, they are rarely just what they seem.
No, they're loaded with meaning.
Right. We are going to teach you how to decode the hidden symbolic language that fundamentally governs your relationships and your workplace. The Deru Kailo framework actually divides human experience into 9 distinct layers. It starts from the literal physical reality of an event and moves all the way up to the worldview that shapes it.
And we are zooming in entirely on layer 8 today.
Yeah.
Right? Yes, layer 8, which is the symbolic layer. The foundational premise here is that human beings don't just live in a world of physical objects and literal events.
We live inside a web of significance.
Exactly. The symbolic layer asks one continuous underlying question of literally everything we encounter. And that question is, what does this stand for?
Okay, let's unpack this. Because transitioning from the literal physical reality of an event to its representative meaning is, well, it's where communication gets incredibly messy.
Oh, totally.
The sources point out something so simple but really profound, like physically, a wedding ring is just a localized band of metal, right?
It's just jewelry.
But symbolically, it holds fidelity and history and a future promise. Or think about a name.
Yeah, name is a great example.
Literally, a name is just a localized sound wave vibrating in the air. But symbolically, it holds a person's entire dignity and identity.
And when we fail to recognize what an object or an event actually stands for, we completely miss the actual conflict happening in the room.
We're basically fighting the wrong battle.
Exactly. The framework refers to this as operating in the meaning domain. We have to evolve past asking just what happened and start asking, what did this come to represent to the people involved?
So, a public correction during a staff meeting isn't just a transfer of information.
Right. It can stand for a sudden loss of status.
Or a missed invitation to, I don't know, a casual lunch. It isn't just a logistical oversight.
No. To the human brain, that stands for tribal exclusion.
You know, it makes me think of how digital photography works.
Oh, so?
It's like looking at a photo on your phone. The literal physical layer is the image you see on the screen, like a picture of a sunset.
Okay, I follow.
But hidden beneath those pixels is the metadata. The metadata tells you the exact GPS coordinates where the photo was taken, the time of day, the camera model, all the exposure settings.
Right, all hidden code.
Exactly. If you just evaluate the picture of the sunset, you are missing all the hidden data that tells you the true story of how that image came to exist.
That captures the dynamic perfectly, actually. The metadata is the meaning. And the framework warns that a lot of our interpersonal conflicts come from people aggressively ignoring that metadata.
Aggressively ignoring it. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, the sources identify 2 specific mismatches in communication that cause just massive friction. The first one is called physical minimization.
Okay, physical minimization. Break that down for us.
This happens when someone uses the word just to strip an event down to its literal pixels, basically erasing the metadata before they even try to understand it.
So going back to the chair example from the intro.
Yeah, perfect example.
Let's say you're a project lead and you walk into a crucial decision-making meeting. For your own project, by the way.
Right, very high stakes.
And there is literally no chair left for you at the table. You have to go sit on the floor against the back wall.
Which is incredibly awkward.
Right, and when you bring it up later to a colleague, they say, look, it's just a chair. We simply ran out of furniture.
They're reducing the event to an inventory issue.
Exactly. But the metadata, the symbolic layer, was that missing the chair meant missing a seat at the table. It represented a complete lack of voice in a project that you lead.
And physical minimization is really just a cognitive shortcut. People use it because acknowledging the symbolic layer requires emotional labor.
And accountability, probably.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
It's much easier to defend a lack of furniture than it is to take responsibility for making a colleague feel marginalized.
That is so true. By minimizing the event to its physical components, they are attempting to instantly dismiss your reaction as an overreaction.
Right. Which brings us to the second mismatch the sources identify. And this one feels like the cousin of minimization.
The intentional defense.
Yes. Intentional defense. This is when someone fiercely defends their internal motive before they ever acknowledge the external impact.
Okay, a classic example of this. Someone says, hey, that joke you made about my presentation hurt me. I felt exposed.
And the immediate reflexive response is always, I didn't mean it that way. I was just trying to lighten the mood.
Oh, I've heard that so many times, or I've probably said it.
We all have. The intentional defense is deeply ingrained in us because our brains are wired to protect our own self-image. When someone tells us we cause harm, our internal threat system flares up.
We immediately want to prove we aren't, like, a bad person.
Exactly. But the framework clarifies a non-negotiable rule of the meaning domain. Intention matters and impact matters, but neither erases the other.
So one doesn't cancel out the other?
No. If an action symbolically lands as an injury to someone's dignity, declaring I didn't mean harm doesn't magically stitch the wound closed.
It's basically arguing about the weather. Like, if I accidentally step on your foot, my intention was to walk normally.
Right.
But the impact is that your foot is broken. My intention doesn't unbreak your foot.
That's a great analogy, which is why the core principle here dictates that impact must be acknowledged before intention is defended.
Okay, so how do you actually do that in real life?
The healthiest way to navigate this is to bridge the two. You say something like, I did not intend to cause harm, but I clearly see that it landed badly, and I understand why.
Oh, so you validate the symbol they received before you explain the symbol you were trying to send.
Precisely.
Okay, so if people are minimizing meaning or, hiding behind their intentions to protect themselves, the flip side must be when we manufacture too much meaning out of thin air.
Yes, because we definitely use symbols as weapons in our own heads.
For sure.
The Deru Kailo framework categorizes these behaviors as distortion traps. You have to remember, the brain is essentially a prediction machine. It absolutely hates ambiguity.
It constantly scans our environment for data to figure out where we stand socially, right?
Yeah, because evolutionarily speaking, being cast out of the tribe meant certain death.
There's this brilliant line from the sources that speaks directly to that. It says, meaning is data, not automatic verdict.
That is such a crucial distinction.
It really is. Our brains are so desperate for certainty that we take a tiny piece of symbolic data and blow it up into a catastrophic conclusion.
Do you have an example in mind?
Yeah, let's say your partner forgets your anniversary. The physical event is literally just a missed date on a calendar.
Right.
The symbolic data is that you feel unremembered in that specific moment. But it is so easy to immediately jump to the verdict, like, you forgot our anniversary, therefore my needs don't matter to you, you never loved me, and this whole relationship is a sham.
Wow, yeah, that escalates fast. The framework defines that specific psychological leap as symbolic inflation.
Symbolic inflation, that makes total sense.
It occurs when you take a valid emotional meaning and you stretch it into this massive overarching verdict that the actual evidence cannot support.
And we do this as a distorted form of self-protection.
Exactly. Our brain would rather hold on to a terrible, painful certainty like, you never loved me, than sit in the vulnerable ambiguity of, I am deeply hurt that you forgot, and we need to figure out why.
Wow, because sitting in the ambiguity is terrifying. But the hurt itself is real. The trap is the inflation.
Precisely. The forgotten anniversary validly symbolizes a failure of prioritization in that instance. That is real data.
But inflating it to a totalizing verdict crushes the other person under a weight they can't possibly hold.
Right. And to combat this, the framework introduces what they call the humility principle.
Okay, what is the rule there?
The rule is, use the smallest symbolic interpretation that remains honest.
Use the smallest symbolic interpretation that remains honest. That is such a practical anchor.
It really grounds you.
It means you don't swing to physical minimization. You don't say, oh, it's just a Tuesday, who cares?
Right. You don't erase the hurt.
But you also don't inflate it to, my entire life is a lie. You locate the honest, grounded middle. Like, I did not feel valued today, and that really hurt.
Now, inflation is something we often do to ourselves. But the framework highlights another trap that others use against us, and this one is called symbolic coercion.
Coercion. That sounds intense.
It is. Symbols of loyalty, tradition, or tribal belonging are incredibly potent. But the sources are explicit in warning that respecting a symbol should never equate to surrendering your personal agency.
The scenario that jumps to mind immediately is holiday rituals.
Oh, absolutely. Family holidays are a minefield for this.
Like when someone says, if you don't fly home and attend this specific family dinner, it proves you reject our values and you hate this family.
Yes. They are weaponizing the symbolic weight of the holiday to trap you into compliance.
Symbolic coercion thrives on exploiting our innate fear of being like a bad person or a bad family member.
It happens whenever a ritual, a tradition, or a shared symbol is twisted into a compliance test. The ethical boundary the framework establishes here is vital.
What's the boundary?
A symbol can be deeply meaningful and worthy of respect without giving anyone the unlimited authority to control your behavior through it.
So you can honor the concept of family loyalty without participating in a specific dinner that is being used as a loyalty test.
Exactly. You don't have to surrender your agency just because the symbol is important.
Okay, so if our brains are so prone to inflating these symbols and falling into these traps just within our personal lives, what happens when you introduce a massive power dynamic into that already fragile equation?
Oh, that changes everything.
Because here's where it gets really interesting in the sources. How does hierarchy mutate the size and force of a symbol?
This is where we examine how the contextual layer of Deru Kailo overlaps with the symbolic layer. The framework states unequivocally that authority fundamentally alters the physics of a symbol.
The physics of a symbol.
Yeah. A gesture does not carry the same weight when it comes from a peer as it does when it comes from someone who holds power over your livelihood.
It's like someone handing you a megaphone.
A megaphone. I like that.
Yeah, think about it. If a coworker whispers a sarcastic, biting joke to you at the water cooler, it's quiet. It's between peers. You can roll your eyes and tell them to knock it off.
Right, the stakes are low.
But if your boss whispers that exact same sarcastic joke about you during a department meeting, they are speaking into a megaphone. The physics of the space have changed.
Simply.
The joke is blasted for the whole office to hear, and suddenly it carries a massive career-threatening risk.
Because authority changes the cost of resistance.
Yes.
When a peer makes a joke, the social cost of pushing back is relatively low. But when a manager makes the same joke, pushing back could cost you a promotion, your reputation, or even your job.
The power dynamic introduces an element of economic and professional survival.
This is exactly why authority figures carry a profoundly higher responsibility for their symbolic signals. They can no longer claim, oh, it's just joking, because their status has fundamentally changed what the joke represents.
So what does this all mean for leaders? It seems like this megaphone effect doesn't have to just be negative.
It doesn't.
If managers realize they are broadcasting at a higher volume, they can use symbolic recognition intentionally to build team trust, rather than accidentally tearing it down.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of organizational psychology, leadership is not merely administrative decision-making. Leadership is meaning-making under power.
Meaning-making under power.
Yes, because high-status roles amplify the source of simple public gestures. Leaders are constantly generating symbolic verdicts about their team, whether they intend to or not.
Like who gets invited to the high-level strategy meeting?
Exactly.
Or even something as simple as whose name the CEO takes the time to pronounce correctly.
Think about the name pronunciation example. It's so common. If a peer mispronounces your name once, it's a phonetic error.
Right.
If a senior leader repeatedly mispronounces your name publicly and makes no effort to correct it, it ceases to be a phonetic error. Symbolically, to the entire department, it signals this person's identity is not worth the cognitive effort to learn.
Wow, that is heavy.
It is. Leaders must cultivate hyper-awareness of what their actions represent to the collective, not just what they literally intended.
Meaning-making under power. It completely reframes management from just managing tasks to managing the symbolic environment.
It's a huge shift in perspective.
But let's say the damage is already done. A leader bumps the megaphone, broadcasts a distorted symbol, and causes real harm.
It happens all the time.
Right. We've diagnosed the problem, but we need to look at how to map out the architecture of repair. Because treating a symbolic wound with a literal Band-Aid clearly doesn't work.
It doesn't work at all. And the framework establishes a rigid rule for the architecture of repair. A physical fix does not mend a symbolic injury.
Okay, so they have to match.
Yes. If the injury occurred on the symbolic layer, the repair must also occur on the symbolic layer. Furthermore, you have to match the repair intensity to the symbolic impact.
So I want to visualize this in practice for our listeners. Let's go back to that boss who made the mocking joke about an employee's presentation in front of the whole department.
Okay, let's track that.
The literal event is the word spoken. The symbolic injury is a public loss of competence and status. Can't that manager just pull the employee aside later into a private office and say, hey, I'm so sorry about earlier, I was just stressed about quarterly numbers?
They should certainly have a private conversation. But a private apology alone will not repair a public injury.
It won't.
No. The environment where the injury occurred changed what the symbol stood for. The mocking didn't just hurt the employee's feelings, It publicly diminished their status in the eyes of the tribe.
Ah, because the rest of the team witnessed that person lose face.
Right. Therefore, the repair must include a public restoration of their dignity and competence. Otherwise, the team's perception remains altered.
But this raises a massive red flag for me.
What's that?
Does the boss have to call a special all-hands meeting and issue some tearful theatrical apology? Because honestly, if I were the employee, that sounds like a second, even more awkward humiliation. I wouldn't want a spotlight put back on me like that.
That is a crucial nuance, and you're spot on. The sources provide clear boundaries for this. The goal of public repair is to restore dignity without manufacturing a second humiliation.
Okay, so how do they do it?
It should never be theatrical. Public restoration needs to recalibrate the employee's social standing naturally.
Naturally, okay.
It could be as simple as the manager speaking up in the next regular team meeting and saying, "Before we start, I want to clarify something regarding yesterday's presentation. Sarah's data analysis on that project was actually incredibly sharp, and I was wrong to dismiss it so quickly. We are going to integrate her strategy moving forward."
Oh, that is brilliant. You aren't centering the drama, you are centering her competence.
Exactly.
You are restoring her status in the exact same space where it was damaged.
You are addressing what the event represented to the team, not just apologizing for what physically happened.
And what about the private interpersonal part of the repair?
For that, the framework offers one of the most effective linguistic tools I've ever seen. When you realize you've caused a symbolic injury and you sit down to talk, you open with this exact phrasing.
I'm taking notes. What is it?
You say, "I want to explain what I meant, but first I want to deeply understand how it landed for you."
I want to explain what I meant, but first I want to deeply understand how it landed for you. That is fascinating.
It's incredibly disarming.
It completely bypasses the intentional defense we talked about earlier.
It does, and it actually works on a neurological level.
Really? How so?
By stating up front that you eventually want to explain your intentions, you calm your own brain's anxiety about being misunderstood.
Oh, because your brain knows it will get its turn to defend itself.
Exactly. But by insisting that they go first, you lower their brain's threat response. It creates a container that honors both the physical intent and the symbolic impact, without letting one erase the other.
We have covered incredible ground today. For you listening, whether you are trying to navigate friction in your marriage or tension in your friendships or complex dynamics in your professional life, the grand synthesis of these sources is this. Ordinary things are never just ordinary.
They never are.
You have to train yourself to stop at the threshold of every significant interaction and ask the metadata question. What does this stand for?
And as you build that habit, you must actively avoid the trap of physical minimization. Stripping away meaning with the word just because it feels easier in the moment.
You must catch your brain when it tries to inflate small symbols into catastrophic verdicts about your worth, too.
Yes, and critically, you have to constantly audit your own status, recognizing that any authority you hold permanently attaches a megaphone to your actions.
You are walking around broadcasting symbols whether you realize it or not.
And this leads to a really profound closing thought drawn from the deeper, almost philosophical roots of the transcripts we analyzed.
I'm ready for it.
Long before frameworks like Deru Kailo ever existed, human beings were physically acting out these dynamics. We process the fundamental elements of drama and meaning through action long before we understand them consciously.
It makes me think of how a toddler will, tie a blanket around their neck and pretend to fight a monster in the backyard. They have never studied Joseph Campbell or The Hero's Journey, obviously, but they are physically acting out the deep symbolic structure of confronting chaos and finding courage.
It's wired into us. Or look back at archaic human history. Early societies performing ritual sacrifices. They weren't just wasting resources.
Right.
They were physically acting out the complex, abstract concept that you must let go of something valuable today to secure a better future tomorrow.
We have always mimicked and embodied these deep symbolic structures.
Always. Every single day, the seemingly mundane choices you make, where you choose to sit in a meeting, how long you let an email sit before replying, the workplace traditions you uphold, the deliberate effort you make to pronounce someone's name.
You are actively writing a deeply symbolic story for the people around you.
You are acting out your core values in real time. So the ultimate question to examine is this. What story are your living symbols telling today? Are they broadcasting a narrative of exclusion, ego, and control? Or are they actively writing a story of dignity, belonging, and repair?
That is an incredibly powerful question to sit with. Next time someone tries to tell you it's just a chair, remember to look for the metadata. The real story is always hiding just beneath the pixels. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. Keep looking beneath the surface, and we will catch you next time.